Hi, this is Kathi Quinn with Floriani. Floriani is a division of R&K Distributing, and I want to welcome you to this week's Project of the Week. Now, last week we learned how to create a motif. Well, I was teaching a seminar this week in St. Louis at Jackman's, and I was asked how would I create an embossed fill. Now, she was talking about an embossed fill that she could save within her fills and pull up any time. I was looking at creating an embossed fill as a one-time design. So I'm going to show you both. So if you want to create your own embossed fills and add to your fancy fills, because an embossed fill is a fancy fill, not to be confused with embossing. Now, embossing would be if I came and I had a fill. So let me go ahead, come up to my artwork tool. I'm just going to create an artwork fill here, and then I'm going to fill it with a standard fill background. So all I've done is take your artwork tool, create an artwork rectangle, came down to my one-click wonders, and told this to become a standard fill. So there we've got just a standard fill. Now if I wanted to do an emboss into it with, let's say, our symbols, I could come up here with my symbols. Let's go ahead and take the airplane, for example, and I can drag and rotate, and I can put as many symbols on here as I want. Now, if I stitch these out right now, what's going to happen is I've got a fill design with like a steel stitch outline of an airplane. But if I want to emboss those airplanes into this as a one-time look, I would come to my sequence view, select all the airplanes, and I would come to my one-click wonder and I would left mouse click and emboss. Now what this is going to do is when I emboss these, is it's going to emboss them into that fill. Now this is a one-time created design. So I have now done embossing. That is how I heard the question. What the question actually was is how would I create a fancy fill that if I came to my fancy fills and selected a fancy fill, how would I turn this into a fancy fill that had full of airplanes? So let's get a new piece of paper. And let's talk about creating your own fancy fills that's got an embossed symbol or design or whatever you want to create. Now the first thing you need to know that's very important is it can only be done with artwork. For example, if I wanted to put Kathy over and over and over in a fill, I would come up and I would go to True Type Text. I'm sorry, I picked artwork. I could come up here to get True Type Text. I could type the word Kathy, say OK. Now I would want to make that a size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the height. Well, this is actually probably pretty good. I'm okay there. I might want to make the width. Well, we're good. I'm just going to leave it. Now with this selected, I could come up and I could have a fill that repeats the word Kathy. Now one issue would be that the K would come right next to this I. I haven't given it any parameters. So I might need to come in with my artwork line up here, just get myself a line, and I want to take artwork and I want to put just left mouse click, right mouse click. What I'm doing is I'm telling it to give me a little space between this. So again, I could right mouse click copy, right mouse click paste. I'm going to paste this. I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to move this right here. Because what I'm actually doing is telling it to leave a little space between the name so it doesn't stack right next to each other. So right mouse click copy, right mouse click paste. It's just easier for me to do it this way. You could certainly just go ahead and draw all four in with your artwork, line art. Remember, this all has to be artwork. Right mouse click copy. Whoops. Right mouse click copy. Right mouse click paste. Rotate. And I'm going to stick this over here. Whoops. On this side. Go back where you belong. Okay, so now I've put these, I've just kind of added them on to give a little space when this turns into a full embossing. Now I'm going to select all of that, and I'm going to go ahead and come up to my combine icon because I want to combine those four little dashes with the lettering just so everything's one piece. So now you notice I no longer have all these separate pieces. I just have the word Kathi with the four dashes. Now with this selected, I'm going to come to Tools, and I'm going to save Fancy Pattern Editor and save Fancy Pattern. Now we can see that this isn't looking too good. So that has to do with the size of the pattern. So I'm going to close this, and I might make this pattern, select it all. I love the fact that I have a preview because I'm not a digitizer. I'm a creator. So sometimes I need to see the visual. So now I've made it a little smaller. Let's see if this looks a little better. Tools, Fancy Pattern Editor, save Fancy Pattern. Much better. So now you can see it says Kathi. I have those little lines to kind of separate the name. I'm going to now save this, and I'm going to save it as Kathi. Now if I want to go ahead, close that, if I want to create a fancy pattern now with my name in it, I'm going to go ahead and I'll just give me a nice background, a nice fill here, and I'm going to go, instead of this time, I'm going to go to Fancy Fill. Left mouse click on Fancy Fill. Let's drop down our fancy and let's go down to the word H-I-J-K, Kathi. Now there is Kathi. I'm going to apply and then let this apply it to it. And let's 3D it. And let's click off so we're not highlighted. So there it is, Kathi. Whoops. Let's fit it to screen. Let's fit. Now you can see K-A-T-H-I. I have got a fancy fill that has an embossed look. Well, the question actually was, she wanted to put a cross in it. Now, first of all, she could have drawn anything she wants as long as she uses the line art tools. So she could have come in here, selected a line art, and actually drawn her own cross if she can draw. I don't draw well, so I don't usually rely on this type of tool because you can see where I would have gotten. So I'm not going to do it that way. What I would do is I would come in here and I would always look at my custom shapes first because somebody may have drawn a cross that would work much better for me. Well, here's a cross in here. So if this is the cross I like, I would bring it up. Now, this pin width, this is a nice feature in Floriani. The pin width, you can change the width of this artwork line. Now this has nothing to do with how wide it'll digitize. It's just the visual so you can see it better. I'm going to make it thinner, and the only reason is because I'm going to bring this down a lot smaller, and I just want to be able to still see the shape. Now when you're creating a fill like this, you're going to do a fancy fill. These should really be not more than a quarter to half an inch tall. Now they can be wider. They can be an inch and a half wide, but height wise, you don't want them over quarter. Half an inch should be pretty much your outside limit. So we don't want them too big. Now you can go to the transform here, and I can see here, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and make this half inch. And then remember, if I don't like it, I'm going to get to see the preview and I can come in and play the adjust game. Now, just like I did with my name, I don't want these crosses so close to each other they blend and they don't stand out as an individual cross. So what I'm going to do here is I again would go ahead and add a little bit of a line between them. Left, left, right. Because actually all I've done is just drawn a little artwork line. Now I'm a copy and paster on this. I'm going to rotate it and I'm going to stick it right down here. And you kind of want to make sure these are centered. You know, you don't have to be, this isn't OCD University. Make sure they're centered, but you don't have to get crazy on this. Rotate, stick it over here, and copy and paste one more time. And if you wanted a pattern to butt up against each other, you wouldn't put these in. I want this pattern to have a little separation. So now there I've got my cross, and I've got a little bit of distance around it. So again, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to select all items, and I'm going to go ahead and paper clip them together. So I like that pretty good. I'm going to go into Tools, Fancy Pattern Editor, Save Fancy Pattern. Now let's see what we get on our look. Okay, that's still a little far apart from me, so let's close it. What I need to do is, this is a little big. Let's make it a little smaller. Tools. Whoops. I tell you, my fingers here feel like they're a little sticky. Tools. Fancy Pattern Editor. Save Fancy Pattern. Still don't like it. Let's close it. Tools. Fancy Pattern Editor. And I could make, I could work on this and have this work perfect the first time every time. But the problem with that is when you get into the place where I am right now, let's make it big. Maybe I'm going the wrong way. You would not know. You'd think, oh, I can't get it right. She gets it right every time. So you see when we get it too big how it does not work at all. And what I suspect actually, it's my lines are a little bit too long here. The actual lines themselves. So I should have made this a lot shorter, this little line right here. And so now I'm going to have to select it. Let's break it apart so it's back into all its little pieces here. And let's go ahead and make these lines, these dashes. I think I made them just a little bit too long. I got a little bit too happy with the spacing there. So I'm just shortening the spacing. I think that's what'll fix us up right here. But all of these little things that I'm going through are things that we all face as home digitizers. Now I'm sure some of you are very, very good, but I'm more of a manipulator. And so when I'm doing stuff like this, I don't always know why something goes wrong. So by doing it this way, you know that when you have something go wrong, you can see how we just play with it. Can't hurt anything. You might as well play until it's fixed. Now I'm going to select all of these again. Let's paper clip them together. Now I know that this is a little big. So I'm going to bring the whole piece a little smaller. And now let's see what we get when we go to Tools, Fancy Pattern Editor, Save Fancy Pattern. There we go. So now you can see we have a nice pattern. The crosses have a little separation in them. And my problem was I had made those little lines in between them. I just put too much distance in between the crosses. So now that I've got that, I'm going to go to Save. And I'm going to name this Crosses. Now I already have one named Crosses. I'm going to go ahead and select that and just replace it. Save. Yes. And I could have done crosses 1, crosses 2, crosses 3. Now I have created a pattern that if I put it in any shape, so let's come get a new piece of paper. Let's get a new shape. She wanted to put it in a regular tie, but I've only got a bow tie in here to work with, so I'm going to grab my bow tie. Now I'm going to come to my fancy fills. Let's 3D that fancy fill. And let's come down and let's go to our crosses. There's the crosses we created. Let's apply that. And we can see she now has a bow tie filled with nice little crosses. Now at this point in time, you can always come, if you don't like the angle of stitches or anything, remember you can always come into your shape tool. You could change a little bit of the angle. Now I probably wouldn't on these crosses, but I just kind of want to show you what kind of options you have. So now we've learned what embossing with one design into another design is, and then we've learned to create a fancy fill that is actually an embossed fill. Now I hope you enjoyed tonight's lesson. I hope you enjoyed going through the mistakes and back and forth so you can see that it's very easy to adjust and to play until you get the look you want. And I look forward to seeing everybody at next week's Project of the Week.